It is a sad day because obviously you read the title of the video, so you know what I'm going to be talking about, but I have just finished The Familiar Zero. Yes, I finished the show, and honestly, the show was amazing all the way through. Now, if I was to give a ranking on worst season to best season, I would honestly have to say the weakest season out of all four of them was season 1. Then second weakest was season 4. Season 2, the second strongest, and season 3 probably being the best. Now again, that's not to say that any of the seasons were bad. Far from it. Like, the show was amazing all the way through, but season 3 honestly was the best of them out of them all to me. So I figured, you know what? And by the way, I literally just finished watching the final episode of the show. And so it's time I give my summary on the 4th season and my thoughts on it. But first, I have to take you back to season 3 because there are some details I forgot to mention in my thoughts of season 3. But halfway through season 3 almost, we encountered a group of mercenaries who, I thought weren't going to return for season 4, and I thought they were just like a season 3 thing. Who was hired by, the evil king of Galia at the time to bring Louise to him so he could take her power and, classic villain stuff. And then that leads to the last season. Now, very much doesn't happen in the first 2 episodes of season 4, but in season 3, Joseph and his familiar both die near the end of the 3rd episode. And then, until episode 9, there's not much that goes on, but with Joseph, who was the king of Galia at the time, before he died, when he died, Tabitha, or Charlotte, whichever name you prefer, her mom was, returned back to normal, so her sanity was returned, everything she had lost from years ago. And the events of the show, everything returned back to normal, and Tabitha was asked to become Queen of Galia. And for a couple episodes, not much was really done with that, other than Tabitha trying to get Saito to fall in love with her so they could marry. And again, I need to put... Again, these are spoilers for the final season of the show, so watch at your own discretion. Obviously, that doesn't happen, but Tabitha still decides to become the Queen of Galia, and so she does. And then we get nothing for a couple more episodes, except... Well, actually, no, that's a lie. like a lot of stuff happens, and that's within the first half of the episode, the first half of the season. So the second half of the season begins with, also, I forgot to mention, Louise and Saito end up getting a mansion, and that's where, a good chunk of a side plot, or whatever you want to call it, happens at the mansion. Nothing too important happens there, so not really that big a deal. Except Saito also becomes Tefania's familiar. So not only did he become Louise's familiar, he also became Tefania's familiar. So he's the familiar of two void mages. And don't worry, we're gonna get to what happens between them in a bit. But since Saito becomes Tefania's familiar as well, the rune he gets from becoming her familiar basically allows Saito to amplify void magic, but at the cost of some of his own life force. So the more he uses that power, the more life force he loses until, he eventually dies. And don't worry, I'll get back into that shortly. And and another plot point that happens is a couple of elves, a husband-to-be and a bride-to-be, kidnap Saito and Tefania for the bride-to-be's research at the start. And then it turns out that the council of their home, the home of the elves, wants them killed because they're barbarians and whatever. And they try to take Tefania away by using force. So what does Saito do? Saito decides, you know what? No, I'm going to protect Tefania. So I'm going to do whatever I can to protect her. And so he does. And what happens? They're basically arrested until, it's time for the execution. And the reason for that was because apparently Saito's a barbarian for protecting Tefania, when Tefania was being taken against her will by force by the elves. And that's perfectly fine, but when Saito decided to, pick a fight to protect her, that's not okay. Like, what's that double standard for the elves? And of course, again, they're locked up, but the elf groom and bride-to-be, as well as their uncle, the guy who was working for Joseph because he had his own reasons back in season 3, they help them escape. In which they end up getting trapped between two brick walls. And Louise, because plot convenience, again, not that it's a bad thing, but plot conveniently learns a new void spell, which basically enters a portal from one place to another. And that's how they escape. Safe and sound. So the elf bride and groom-to-be they live with Saito, Louise, Siesta, and the others for basically the rest of the series, which is, again, the second half of the final season. And next, again, I already mentioned Tabitha becomes Queen of Gallia, so I don't need to say anything about that. But then there's an evil dragon that awakens within the last 4 episodes of the show. So episodes 9, 10, 11, and 12 of season 4, those last 4 episodes. This dragon is the final, bad guy of the series. So, when they find out that it has awoken to decide and just burning down entire, countries and whatnot to try to look for the 4 void mages to eat them so it can get even stronger. So, of course, they try to take it down, but they fail. So, what does the Pope, one of the 4 void mages, because you have to remember, there's 4 void mages, right? Louise, Tefania, the Pope, and Joseph. But Joseph is dead. Oh, Joseph died. So there's only 3 void mages. So what does the Pope do? He gives his life to hopefully try to stop the dragon, which fails. But he did it so Giulio can live. So that leaves... So out of the 4 void mages, that leaves Louise and Tefania. And because they fail, because everybody failed to kill that dragon, they had to come up with a plan to do it. They eventually do. Also, I need to bring up the fact that Saito tries to stop the dragon's breath, but Doflamingo ends up getting shattered because of it. So, Doflamingo gone. Or so we think. Again, spoilers, but Doflamingo ends up, getting, somewhat, transcoded or whatever, and into Saito's Gandalfer rune on his hand. And so they get to talking that in episode 11, they get to talking about... Saito says, if I can get a fighting plane, I can successfully take it down with Louise's help. Louise is listening in on this too. And she agrees to it. But here's the thing. Saito... It doesn't go exactly how Saito planned, because... Well, yes, Louise does agree to it. Instead of going to get a plane, Louise just decides to send Saito home, because he wasn't born where they are, so... Why does he have to help fight the dragon? It's not from there, so it's not really his issue. So Louise just sends Saito home, back to Japan. And nobody's happy about that. Not Saito, not Louise, not Tefania, not Siesta. Nobody was happy about that. And I wasn't happy about that, because that was fucking sad. God damn, dude. I saw that happen, I'm like, whoa, no, fucking way. This sucks, man. I even said that too when I was watching. I'm like, this fucking sucks. So yeah, that means throughout the last half of the 11th episode and the first half of the final episode, Saito's trying to find a way to get back to Louise and the others to put an end to that dragon. And this episode's a nice callback to the end of season 1, because in the last 2 or 3 episodes of season 1, it was mentioned that a total eclipse can send Saito back to Japan. And again, it's a callback because that's what Saito does, except the opposite. Like, he uses a total eclipse from Japan to get back to Louise and the others. And he does it successfully. In a plane, too, as well. And what happens is the dragon goes down exactly as, the final bad guys of the first season did. Literally the exact same way. In the plane, Louise and Saito helping Louise with her void magic, using the explosion to kill the dragon, which actually succeeds the second time around. So while Saito, and again, keep in mind, since Saito, as Tiffania's familiar, can amplify void magic, he was only able to do that 3 times. So, and because of that, his life as Tiffania's familiar ended, because that part of Saito technically did die. But the Gandalfer half of Saito didn't die. So Saito still lived. And yes, even after all that, we get a happy ending. The ending everybody has been waiting for since the second season started, pretty much. And what is the happy ending? Louise and Saito get married. And instead of staying and keep in mind, everybody is happy for Louise and Saito. They accepted that Louise and Saito are the only ones that are compatible with one another. So they all just learned to accept that, and they're happy for them. I was too, because again, it's what fans of the show or manga as well were waiting for since, it started getting built up to that. So, because of that, they end up getting married. Even Louise's sisters were happy for them. I mean, the oldest sister of Louise was happy, even. So that's nice to see. So, but here's the thing, though, about that, though, too. I expected Louise and Saito to stay where they are, with a mansion, stuff like that. But what caught me off guard is they decide to go back to Japan to live there together. Back in Saito's house, apartment, whatever, that he lived in, before he became Louise's familiar. So they're married, but they decide not to stay where Louise is. They decide to go back to Japan together and live there. And honestly, that was the ending of the show deserved. It really was. And honestly, again, I said that season 4 was the second weakest, but again, none of the seasons were. The entire show was amazing, but season 2 and 3 were just honestly much better. I also need to give you the years the seasons came out individually. Season 1 came out in 2006. Was the only one that was dubbed. Season 2 came out in 2007. Not dubbed. So, also you have to keep in mind, seasons 1, 2, 3, and 4 were all subbed, of course. But only season 1 was dubbed. But yeah, season 1 came out 2006. Season 2, 2007. Season 3 in 2008. And the final season, season 4, came out in 2012. It took 4 years for season 4 to be made. And honestly, would it have been worth it watching it back then? Honestly, yeah, it would have. Because again, the show was fucking amazing. Like, again, when I made my video on season 1, like 2 months ago, or however long it's been, I said that while it wasn't, I mean, it was okay, because again, it was only the first season I had watched. Like, it wasn't great, but also wasn't bad. Like, it was okay. Which is why I said season 1 was the weakest season. And then after season 1, the show just got exponentially better as it went on. Again, not that any of the seasons were terrible, but yeah. Completely disregard what I said in that video. This show was amazing all the way through. Like, it exceeded my expectations. Like, and honestly, I wasn't really expecting much from it, but you know what? It exceeded my expectations, and it was absolutely amazing all around. And I 101% recommend you watch The Familiar Zero all the way through yourself, because it was amazing. And that ending was the only way it could have ended, and I'm glad it was how it ended. Because Louise and Saito were married. That's... everybody had to grow to accept it, even the ones that loved Saito, like Tefania, Siesta, Tabitha. They had to accept that. And they did. And then Saito did eventually go back home, but he went back home with Louise, the one he loved. And honestly, it was great. It really was. It's sad to, see me. It's sad that I finished watching the series, but that doesn't mean I probably won't watch it again. I'm probably gonna watch it again at some point, but who knows? But yeah, as for my thoughts on season 4, it was great. All 4 seasons were great in their own ways, but again, I still gotta say, season 3, probably still the best. Followed by season 2, then season 4, then season 1. But yeah, season 4 was amazing. The whole series as a whole was fantastic. Like, yeah, there's some episodes here and there that are like, oh, this is boring, man. When's the good stuff going to happen? But again, every show is like that. Again, I don't think to me personally, there were not any bad episodes, and it took me 3 whole seasons to actually like Geesh. Because again, I said in season 1, I hated Geesh. Season 2, I said we didn't really see Geesh much for like for the first half of season 2, so I didn't really have any thoughts on him. And then season 3, I watched season 3, started liking Geesh. And then season 4 came, watched season 4. I honestly don't think there were any characters I hate, except, Joseph, his familiar, but they were villains, so. And they died. But at least they died together, so. They died happily, I guess. But yeah, this show was honestly fantastic. I loved it all the way through. And again, my expectations for it were low. Because I did read reviews saying that it wasn't that great. But honestly, I think it's because at the time, there are like a lot of other big animes going on at the same time, so Familiar Zero was overshadowed by those other ones. So Familiar Zero really didn't get time in the spotlight, and because of that, only the first season was dubbed. But honestly, I still wish seasons 2, 3, and 4 were dubbed as well. But again, most likely not gonna happen, so that sucks, but again, it was still worth watching all the way through, even if it wasn't dubbed. But, yeah. Great show. And honestly, to me, it honestly felt like one of those shows that, while at the time it probably wasn't amazing, because again, it was probably most likely overshadowed by a bunch of other things as well. But it's also one of those shows that, you have to give it time to like sit and have it age, and then watch it later on in your life and be like, this isn't that bad. I feel like this is what this show was. It was one of those. And honestly, yeah, it was amazing. And I also remember stating that after I watched season 1, in my video for season 1, that it looked familiar to me, and I actually remembered watching some of it when it was airing on Adult Swim all those years ago. I probably did. I probably didn't. But one thing I know for certain, this show aged greatly, and it was amazing. And let it be known that Stefania officially is my favorite character in the show. And this has been what I thought about Familiar Zero. I'm glad you watched all 4 videos on this show, because all 4 videos of my thoughts on this show. I enjoyed making these just as much as I enjoyed watching this show. And again, if ever possible, I recommend you give this show a watch all the way through. It's actually pretty good. But yeah, that's the Familiar of Zero. Remember to vote on my poll, because depending on how many votes one of the options gets on my poll, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but just vote on the poll. And tomorrow, I'm gonna be playing Resident Evil 5 again. Thanks for watching my quadrility, or however the fuck it's pronounced, on my thoughts on the Familiar of Zero. Take care. This show is amazing, man.